Welcome back guys to another Jensen Media video, and Happy New Year's because we're kicking off with a brand new year, 2017. But I bet we'll still be writing 2016 on everything we have. So because it's a brand new year, we are going to be taking a look back at the best and worst games of 2016. I'm going to do 5 of each. Now I know a lot of people are doing this, but I'm going to mix it up and do a good and bad list, because I feel there was a lot of good games and bad games. So I'm going to go through the bad games first and then end on a good note. So here we go. So first on our list of bad games is Homefront: The Revolution. I really wanted to love this game, and I gave it every opportunity to win me over, but it just couldn't do it. I did enjoy the first game for what it was, and yes, it did have its flaws, but I really liked the story. This game, however, is just mind-numbingly tedious, and it had a real lack of polish. It packs a super lengthy campaign for these type of games, but it makes it so difficult to want to finish the game, even with the story being there. It had great atmosphere and so much potential, and the world that it brought to life actually felt really good. It just kind of threw it away into the garbage with all the repetition and bugs that it had. Definitely really painful because I really wanted to like this game. Next up is Quantum Break, another game that had so much potential. It had a cool concept and really nice graphics, but the game was just broken in so many ways for me. But the pacing of how the game worked in some of the certain segments within it, it was just a pain to play. It tried to do so much, and really a lot of it just did not work. I do think the game still has its high points, but overall the game just wasn't that enjoyable. It could have been so much better, but it was overshadowed by its clunkiness and missing details. It just made it a lot less fun and much more of a hassle than it needed to be. Next up is Mighty No. 9. A game that was meant to capture the blue lightning in a bottle that was Mega Man. It clearly missed its mark and flew off into the distance somewhere, and it totally lacks the soul that made Mega Man oh so good. It has absolutely no life in what it wants to do, and for people that were expecting a Mega Man successor out of it, well, they're going to be left solely disappointed. The game is overall a very underwhelming and generic experience, and it really has no memorable parts in it. They basically took the concept of Mega Man and transferred it to a new game, but stripped away everything that made Mega Man fun and worthwhile. It was just really poorly executed, and it was sad. There were a ton of Mega Man fans backing this game, so it's actually really unfortunately that it failed. Speaking of hype, do I even have to say it? The game that was overhyped most this year was No Man's Sky. Don't get me wrong, I don't think the game is necessarily a bad game for what it is, but it was a $20 game charging people $60. Let that sink in for a moment. And the way that the developer handled the game was absolutely the wrong way to do it. I'm not a game developer, and I know all the hard work you can put into a game and get attached to it, but this game has a bad rep just because of how they handled things, and everything that revolves around the game since its release. It really shouldn't have been that way, and if they handled the situation better, the outcome could have been better. Technically, the game is decent-ish, and it was made even better with an update that they brought out for free recently. It's not really a bad game per se, but it's still not really the game people were expecting. And it certainly wasn't what was advertised to go along with the $60 people were spending on it. That's why it's one of the worst games on this list. But there's one that's even worse out there. How can that be? Well, there is a top worst one. Are you ready for this train wreck? There is a game that was released this year that is notoriously bad, and I think a majority of the people out there feel the same exact way I do. What is this game that could be so bad? Resident Evil Umbrella Corps. This game is the most lifeless game there is. Definitely the most lifeless Resident Evil game out there. It features a game packed full of sluggish movements that feel unrefined, and a game that ends up just feeling generic and mindless, much like the undead that is within it. The ideas all really sounded great on paper, and it really could have been a good game. But the way things were done just makes the game absolutely an abomination. This game shouldn't have been released at all. This really just feels like a cash-in. trying to take advantage of the Resident Evil fans. There isn't even really much of a story here, and the game makes absolutely no sense, and the mechanics are garbage. The only shining factor I could find in the game, and yes, that's like saying there is a shining factor in a turd, but the only shining factor in the game that I can possibly see is that some of the maps actually look really good. But with such a disastrous game, it's lost in the garbage that the game is. No effort, and the game is just plain bad. So that's my 5 games that were bad in 2016. Those were the worst of the worst, in my opinion. Doesn't make it fact, but those are my top 5 worst games. So now we're going to take a look at the best games, in my opinion, of 2016. First off, Hitman. Now, I am one that never really got into playing the original games. I just never got around to experiencing them, and back then they really just didn't interest me. I was a kid who didn't have much interest in being an assassin in a game. I was more into RPGs, racing games, wrestling games, and Pokemon. But I have to say, this game is a well put together game. And the game is actually a very highly detailed experience that plays out in different released episodes. The levels are very fleshed out and incredibly packed with details. Each episode has a life of its own and feel different from one another. And the way the game offers each target in a ton of different ways makes for superb gameplay and high replayability. All the options you get to play with here, and just how different things can play out each time you play an episode, just adds a very deep layer to replayability. And you end up not really minding that it's broken up into different episodes. In fact, I think that helps the experience. And boy does the experience feel really strong here. Even though I haven't played the originals, I would dare say this is probably the best experience you can have with Hitman, and your dreams of being an assassin for hire. I would hope at least. Next up is a rare gem in my opinion. Not a lot of people seem to talk about this game, but I really liked it. It is a rhythm game that feels evolved from the past normal concept of what a rhythm game is. You really have to feel the rhythm and learn it in order to get past the levels. And yes, it has a very steep learning curve, which I actually like. It will make you rage sometimes, but it's when you hit all those strides perfectly that make you feel like a rhythm god. And also the visuals are on another level for me. But also, when you are on a bad streak and you just can't hit anything right, it's going to make you want to throw your controller out the window. So it definitely can be frustrating, but overall it has a very awesome level of immersion for just being a rhythm game. And it's very challenging with loads of atmosphere and the unique qualities that it has. Thumper is a great game, with amazing high quality visuals. It's absolutely stunning in its presentation and quality to me. Really an awesome game. I feel like by putting this next game on this list, I feel like some people are going to crucify me. But everyone, just hear me out here. Final Fantasy 15. And yes, I can hear already that everybody is saying this isn't a good game. Look, the concept of this whole video is my opinion. This is my list. If you want to go make your own list and your own video, you are very welcome to do so. So I thought that Final Fantasy 15 was a very good game. Maybe different in terms to what you would expect from a Final Fantasy game, and the game did have lots of flaws and conflicts within it, with its fair share of identity issues in the second half of the game, but I did like the game a lot for overall what it was. It had a ton of charm and beauty within its world, and yes, it did take some risks that really didn't turn out all that well and pay off, but I still liked the game. By the end of the game, it brings everything together, and for me, the overall experience was very enjoyable. I had a great time with the game and lots of fun. It was a great game that had to overcome a lot of its concepts, and I think it managed to do so quite well. Next up is Uncharted 4. The Uncharted series has always been a high-quality AAA series, and it's clear that this game continues that same high-quality mark. It boasts a pretty lengthy campaign and a very compelling story that weaves in and out of different time periods. If you played the past games, you pretty much are already familiar with the concept here. But it's not such a bad thing. You can really see the high quality within the levels and the level of polish here. There's just so much effort in this game. It does have a lot of new mechanics, and somehow breathes a breath of fresh air into the game, and even has a fun multiplayer packed in with it. How many games can you say that has a fun multiplayer and a really immersive single player? Not many games give that level of attention to both single player and multiplayer. Overall, it's a very fun experience and really worth checking out. Now, I did have an issue trying to figure out what was my top game of 2016. Most of these games on the good part of this list were very hard to put on a level of which one was high and low on my games list. It was actually pretty difficult, because I love all these games were awesome. But the one that really did it for me and is my top game of 2016 is Doom. Now, I didn't initially expect to like Doom for some reason. I thought it would have been way too far from the concept of what Doom was to me, but the game hits all the right tones, and it made it feel so awesome. This game is pretty much a modern day Doom, which I'm pretty positive that's what they were going for. You have this desperate feeling of trying to fight through demons and monstrosities, to try to get to the next health pack on a level, and continue along on your journey against fighting this evil. It's very simple in its concept of just having to kill everything just to move on, but that nails pretty much what the original games were. Small rooms filled with demons that you had to kill and make a bloody mess out of in order to continue and find the keycards. It even has a lot of little nods to the originals, which I like a lot. Overall, they didn't forget where they came from, and that's just awesome. Because a lot of games these days that are rebooted and remade, they just forget what they used to be. I'm glad this one remembered the bloody mess that it was. Overall, this is my best game of 2016, and it was mind-numbingly bloody fun. So that's it, guys. These are my favorites and my worst games of 2016. Again, I cannot reiterate enough, these are my favorite and worst games. These are opinions, not facts. I just wanted to share something cool with you guys. I don't make a lot of lists most of the time. It's just not really my thing. But I made one. Everybody was doing it, and I kinda just wanted to do the same thing for once. So that's it, guys. Thanks for watching. You guys have a good day and a good night. Thanks for watching, guys.